In the heart of a bustling city, a polished new hire steps into an office where ambition thrives. But beneath the surface, unseen forces conspire to test her resolve. The hum of fluorescent lights echoed faintly in the open office of Dalton Industries, a mid-sized marketing firm in Louisville, Kentucky, nestled in the heart of downtown. The building was a mix of glass and steel, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a view of a busy, thriving city for 25-year-old Alana. This was supposed to be the first step in proving she could carve her own path. She had walked into the office on her first day, with confidence hidden beneath a polished exterior. Her deep brown skin glowed under the natural sunlight streaming in through the windows, and her natural curls framed a face that betrayed a mix of quiet determination and youthful hope. Alana wasn't just another entry-level employee. She was the daughter of the CEO, Gerald Lawson, a fact she had decided to keep to herself. Gerald Lawson was a well-respected leader in the industry. At 55, his commanding presence and sharp intellect had earned him a reputation as both a visionary and a man who valued integrity. But this wasn't his story, it was Alana's. Alana had begged her father to let her work her way up without the cushion of being the boss's kid. Reluctantly, Gerald had agreed, assigning her a role in the marketing department under a manager named Ryan Harper. Ryan, 45-year-old, with a trim beard and a penchant for expensive TIs, was known for his results-driven approach. But beneath his polished exterior lay a man quick to judge, and even quicker to dismiss those he deemed unworthy of his time. Understood, Mr. Harper. From the moment Alana introduced herself, Ryan's handshake was brisk, his eyes scanning her like a resume he couldn't be bothered to read. "Marketing assistant, right?" he said, barely meeting her gaze. "Let's get one thing clear. I don't have time to babysit. I expect you to keep up." Alana's stomach tightened, but she offered a polite smile. Ryan gave a curt nod, already turning away. "I'm here to learn and contribute. Stay out of my way." Her workspace was a small cubicle. "Good. Your desk is over there, tucked away from the rest of the team." The placement felt deliberate, as if Ryan wanted to make it clear where she stood, or didn't, within the hierarchy. Alana settled in, reminding herself why she was there. This was about building her own career, her own identity. She didn't need anyone to hold her hand. Still, the first few weeks were tougher than she anticipated. While her colleagues exchanged ideas in brainstorming sessions, Alana found herself sidelined. Her suggestions were met with dismissive remarks, often thinly veiled as jokes. "Good try, Alana," Ryan would say, his voice dripping with condescension. "But maybe let the more experienced folks handle this." What stung the most wasn't just the rejection. It was the subtle undertone that made it clear. Ryan saw her as less capable, less deserving, yet she refused to let it show. Each night she stayed late, poring over campaign data and refining her ideas. She wanted her work to speak for itself. But Ryan didn't seem to notice or care. "Coffee, run," he barked one morning, tossing a $20 bill onto her desk without so much as a glance. "I need my usual, and don't take all day." Alana stared at the bill for a moment before grabbing her coat. The whispers from nearby colleagues didn't escape her ears. "She's not gonna last," one voice said softly. "Yeah, he's really got it out for her," another replied. Alana clenched her jaw. They were wrong. She wasn't going anywhere. The weeks dragged on, and Ryan's behavior only worsened. It wasn't just the demeaning tasks or the curt responses. It was the constant, insidious undermining of her every effort. In team meetings, Alana's ideas were either ignored outright or subtly appropriated by Ryan, who would twist her words just enough to present them as his own. One Monday morning, the team gathered in the conference room to discuss an upcoming campaign for a new client, a mid-sized tech company based out of San Diego. Alana had spent the weekend researching trends and demographics, crafting a detailed proposal she believed could make a real impact. "Does anyone have suggestions?" Ryan asked, scanning the room. His eyes lingered briefly on Alana, but the look wasn't one of interest. It was a warning. Alana hesitated, but raised her hand anyway. "I think we could focus on their target audience's growing interest in eco-friendly solutions. Positioning the product as sustainable could really resonate." Ryan smirked, leaning back in his chair. "Sustainable? Huh? That's ambitious." The tone was dismissive, but he didn't move on. Instead, he turned to another team member, Jared. "What do you think, Jared?" Jared glanced at Alana, an apologetic look flashing across his face. Before he spoke, "Actually, I think Alana's right. The market data supports a sustainability angle." Ryan's smirk faded. "Fine," he said, his tone sharp. "We'll look into it by the end of the meeting." Ryan had rephrased Alana's proposal as his own, stripping it of her contributions. Alana remained silent, her hands gripping the edge of her notebook. Speaking up wouldn't change anything. It never did. But Ryan didn't stop at professional sabotage. His remarks grew more personal, cloaked in casual comments that cut deep. "You know," he said one afternoon, as she presented a draft for an ad campaign, "I'm surprised you're this polished. Most people in your position don't come across as refined." Alana paused, the weight of his words sinking in. "People in my position?" she asked, her voice steady. Ryan gave a tight-lipped smile. "You know what I mean. Let's not make this about anything." "It's not." She knew exactly what he meant. "Sort this by end of day. Thanks." It was a task that would have taken a junior intern hours to complete, and it was far beneath her role. Yet when she asked Ryan about it, he shrugged. "Everyone has to pitch in," he said, feigning nonchalance. "You're not too good for a little grunt work, are you?" Alana didn't respond. She spent the day hunched over her desk, sorting the papers into neat piles. As the hours ticked by, her resolve hardened. She wouldn't let him push her out. She was better than this, and one way or another, she'd prove it by the time she finished. The office was nearly empty. Ryan strolled past her cubicle, stopping briefly. "Still here?" he said, his voice dripping with mock surprise. "Guess you've got something to prove." Alana didn't look up. "Good night, Mr. Harper." As he walked away, a small smile tugged at the corner of her lips. He had no idea who she really was, or what she was capable of. It was an unusually hectic Friday morning at Dalton Industries. The team was preparing for a major client presentation scheduled for the afternoon, and the office buzzed with tension. Ryan, of course, made it his mission to amplify the stress, barking orders and pacing the floor like a drill sergeant. Alana sat at her desk reviewing her notes. She had prepared a crucial segment of the presentation, one she hoped would finally showcase her abilities. As the team gathered in the conference room for a final review, Ryan took his place at the head of the table. His expression was a blend of irritation and smugness, as if he thrived on the chaos around him. Alana sat near the end of the table, her notebook open and pen in hand, ready to present her section. "Let's start with the creative concepts," Ryan announced, his gaze sweeping over the room before landing on Alana. "Alana, do you have something for us?" She nodded, standing to address the team. "I've analyzed the client's brand, voice, and audience, and I've developed a concept centered on—" "Hold on," Ryan interrupted, raising a hand. "Before you get into that, I just want to remind everyone that we're looking for polished ideas. This isn't the time for experimentation." The words hung in the air like a slap. A few team members shifted uncomfortably in their seats, but no one spoke up. Alana took a deep breath and pressed on, her voice steady despite the lump forming in her throat. As I was saying, she continued, I believe positioning the product as both innovative and socially responsible will resonate with the target demographic. I've outlined a campaign theme that highlights. That's enough. Ryan cut in, his tone dismissive. We'll circle back to this later if there's time. Alana froze, her hands gripping the edges of her notebook. The room fell silent, the tension so thick it felt suffocating. Ryan moved on as if nothing had happened, calling on another team member to present their ideas. The meeting ended with Ryan taking full credit for the campaign direction, which was largely based on Alana's concept. As the team dispersed, Alana lingered behind, her frustration boiling over. When Ryan returned to the room to gather his notes, she seized the moment. Mr. Harper, she said, her voice firm. Why do you keep dismissing my work? Ryan looked up, startled by her directness. Then his expression hardened. Excuse me, you heard me, she said, stepping closer. I've worked harder than anyone else on this team, and you keep cutting me off, belittling my contributions, and taking credit for my ideas. Why? Ryan scoffed, leaning against the table. You want the truth? Fine. You don't belong here. You're in over your head. And honestly, I'm tired of cleaning up your messes. Alana's heart pounded in her chest, but she stood her ground. You don't even give me a chance to show what I'm capable of. You've made up your mind about me before I even walked through the door. Ryan crossed his arms, his smirk infuriatingly smug. Maybe you're not cut out for this kind of work. Maybe you should consider something more suited to your strengths. The implication was clear, and Alana's composure cracked. You don't get to decide what I'm capable of. She shot back, and for the record, I've already done more for this campaign than you ever will. Ryan's face reddened, his smirk vanishing. He took a step forward, his voice rising. Watch your tone. Young lady, you might think you're special, but you're just another assistant, easily replaceable. Before Alana could respond, the door to the conference room swung open. Gerald Lawson stood in the doorway, his tall frame exuding authority. His dark suit was impeccably tailored, and his sharp eyes scanned the scene. Before landing on Ryan, what's going on here? Gerald asked, his voice calm but laced with the steel edge. Ryan froze, his confidence evaporating. Mr. Lawson, I was just what Gerald said. Stepping into the room, his gaze shifted to Alana, his expression softening. Alana, are you all right? The room went silent as Ryan's face turned pale. He looked between Alana and Gerald, the realization dawning on him like a slap. Wait. She's my daughter, Gerald finished, his tone firm, and from what I just overheard, it sounds like you've been treating her with a level of disrespect I find unacceptable. Ryan stammered, his usual eloquence reduced to a sputtering mess. Mr. Lawson, I didn't realize. That's the problem, isn't it? Gerald cut him off. You didn't realize because you didn't care to. You dismissed her because you assumed she wasn't worth your time. And now, you're about to learn how wrong you've been. Ryan opened his mouth to protest, but Gerald raised a hand to silence him. We'll discuss this later. For now, you're excused. Alana and I have a presentation to prepare. Ryan nodded quickly, gathering his things, and practically running out of the room. Gerald turned to Alana, his expression softening again. You handled yourself well, he said, but from now on, you don't have to fight these battles alone. Alana blinked back tears, the same voice he used in boardrooms to command respect. Alana nodded, her confidence returning. She explained her ideas with clarity and passion, the same way she had tried to during the earlier meeting. But this time, there was no interruption, no condescending remarks. Gerald listened intently, occasionally nodding or asking a thoughtful question. By the end of her presentation, a smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. This is excellent work, he said. If they don't see that, it's their loss. Let's make sure this campaign gets the attention it deserves. When the team reconvened later that afternoon for the client presentation, the atmosphere was tense. Ryan sat stiffly at the table, avoiding eye contact with everyone. Alana, however, walked in with her head held high, Gerald at her side. The presentation began smoothly, with each team member presenting their portion. When it was Alana's turn, Gerald introduced her. This next segment was developed by one of our most promising team members. He said, his voice steady, "I'll let her take it from here." Alana stepped forward, her palm slightly sweaty, but her voice steady. She delivered her proposal with the same confidence and poise she had shown in front of her father earlier. As she spoke, she noticed the subtle shifts in the room. Colleagues leaning forward, taking notes, nodding in agreement. Even Ryan couldn't mask his begrudging acknowledgement of her competence. By the time she finished, the clients were visibly impressed. One of them, a middle-aged woman with sharp glasses and a warm smile, turned to Gerald. "This is exactly what we were hoping for. Who developed this?" Alana hesitated, but Gerald spoke up before she could. "The credit belongs entirely to Alana." He said she's been a driving force behind this campaign. Applause filled the room, and Alana couldn't help the small smile that spread across her face. For the first time since she started, she felt seen. Later that evening, as the office emptied out, Gerald called a meeting with Ryan. Alana wasn't privy to the conversation, but she could guess its tone from her desk. She watched through the glass walls of her father's office as Ryan's posture wilted under Gerald's stern gaze. It wasn't long before Ryan emerged, his face pale and his usual swagger replaced with hurried steps as he left the building. Moments later, Gerald approached Alana's desk. "Ryan will no longer be overseeing your department," he said simply. "I've reassigned him to another role where he'll have less opportunity to misuse his authority." Alana nodded, grateful but measured. "I don't want special treatment, Dad. You're not getting special treatment," Gerald replied, his tone softening. "You're getting what you've earned. There's a difference." He paused, studying her for a moment. "You've handled yourself with more grace and patience than most would. I'm proud of you, but don't let anyone, not even me, make you feel like you have to prove your worth. You're already enough." The words settled into Alana's heart, a balm for the wounds she'd endured. The following Monday, the office felt different. Ryan's absence was palpable, and though no one said it outright, there was a collective sense of relief among the team. The tension he had brought to the workplace had evaporated, leaving space for collaboration and growth. Alana noticed the shift almost immediately. Colleagues who had once hesitated to engage with her now stopped by her desk to ask questions or offer feedback on her ideas. Jared, the teammate who had supported her in the meeting weeks earlier, approached her with a smile. "Hey, Alana," he said. "I just wanted to say, you really nailed that presentation, and it's good to see you getting the credit you deserve." "Thanks, Jared," she replied, the sincerity in his words warming her. "I appreciate that." As the days passed, Alana found herself stepping into a more active role within the team with Ryan out of the picture. She no longer felt the weight of his judgment. Her ideas flowed more freely, and her confidence grew. With each successful project, she began to see the fruits of her hard work, not just in the approval of others, but in her own belief in herself. One afternoon, Gerald called her into his office, the sunlight streaming through the windows, illuminated the walls adorned with awards and framed photos of the company's milestones. Gerald gestured for her to sit, his expression a mix of pride and reflection. "I've been thinking about what happened," he began, "and while I'm proud of how you handled yourself, I regret that you had to endure it in the first place." Alana nodded, her hands resting in her lap. "It wasn't easy," she admitted, "but I don't regret staying. I needed to prove to myself that I could handle it." Gerald leaned forward, his gaze steady. "You shouldn't have to prove anything to anyone. Your worth isn't determined by how others treat you, especially when their actions are rooted in ignorance or bias. But what you've shown is resilience, and that's a quality no one can take from you." The words resonated deeply, a reminder of the lessons she had learned. Throughout the ordeal, she had faced prejudice and condescension, but she hadn't let it define her. Instead, she had risen above it, demonstrating strength and integrity. Weeks later, during a team lunch, to celebrate the success of the campaign, Alana found herself surrounded by her colleagues. People who now saw her not just as the assistant, but as a vital part of the team. As she looked around the room, she realized something profound. Her journey wasn't just about proving her capabilities. It was about changing perceptions, breaking down biases, and paving the way for others who might face similar challenges. As the lunch wound down, Gerald raised a glass. "To the team," he said, his voice carrying the weight of gratitude and pride. "And to Alana, whose ideas and determination remind us all of the value of hard work and fairness. May we all strive to create a workplace where everyone's contributions are valued." The room erupted in cheers, and Alana couldn't help but smile. It wasn't just a victory for her, it was a step forward for everyone. As Alana's journey of resilience and courage comes full circle, it's a reminder that strength lies in self-belief. Want more stories of determination and triumph? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring tales.